Welcome to the I Need Coffee and Better Ideas podcast, where we caffeinate your brain with the freshest takes in news media. And welcome to today's edition of I Need More Coffee and Better Ideas. It's been a few days since we recorded last time, but we are back with a bang, and we've got Mather Economics with us today with Ignaz Van Hasselt. Welcome. Wow. Welcome to the show.
Okay, that was fully Dutch.
Dankjewel. And that's where my Dutch stops. It's really good to have you on the show. We obviously know Mather quite well from before. I personally know Mather quite well since I've been in this industry for a while, but I don't know you that well. So we're particularly happy to have you on. And to kick things off, as we always do, please tell us who you are and what you do and how you ended up where you are today.
Cool. Well, I'll try to keep it brief. Started a decade ago at Media House, which some of you may know from publications like NRC, Telegraph, but also expanding further than just the Benelux, but also in Germany and in Ireland now. So start there 10 years ago in the B2B department. Media House bought NRC, later Telegraph. So I switched from the B2B department to Telegraph to set up actually the editorial newsroom data. They want to incorporate a paywall. So that was quite the journey. So I was responsible for the content analytics. So that also ties into the topic of today. And in my later stages for Media House, I was responsible for digital growth as a product manager for the B2C department. So all in all, having worked in B2B, editorial, B2C, I wanted to scale the knowledge that I had. So I joined Mather Economics, which is also part of Media House. And we're trying to help as many European publishers from my side as we can.
Great. I used to work quite a lot with Media House in the past. And I have to say, out of all the customers I've worked with, Media House is one of the more innovative and forward-leaning into using technology. You coming from that company, is my assumption right? Or what are your thoughts?
That's a nice compliment. That's for me a different view than, of course, what you have internally. Things never go speedy enough. We're never adopting it. So, but you're always criticizing your own company. But that's nice when you're now outside and with other publishers, like, hey, it wasn't that bad after all. We're quite in the lead back. So that's.
I have to say, I mean, I worked with Jessica Bultin and her team.
Yeah, she's great.
And the way they leverage data in the advertising side of the business when I worked fairly closely with Media House was far beyond what other customers I was at CSAS at the time, but it was far beyond what any other customer was doing in the advertising space. So for me, at least, from looking in from the outside, it was quite innovative and cool to see that a Media House like Media House, it's always funny with that name, was working in that way.
Yeah, yes, she's great. She's one of the superstars, so you should get her on as well.
Yeah, she's fantastic. Kudos to you, Jessica, if you're listening. Pivoting the conversation slightly. So now that you're at Mather, I assume you get to work with more customers and seeing more stuff happening across more media outlets. And that gives you a different perspective on things. And I can identify that with, my own career as well. When we look into sort of, the audience behavior, this is something that is discussed across the industry, I feel like, at all times. And it's a challenging one because there's so much data and there's so much information to sift through. But when we look at the engagement strategies that can be put in place for publishers, how are you seeing this develop going forward? Because it's been a lot of talk about it, and I've seen a lot of articles written on the subject. I'm certainly not an expert on it, but I know that you guys over at Mather, you have done a lot of work on this. So I guess my question is, where do you see this going forward, and what are the important pieces of the puzzle that media houses should be looking for?
Yeah, so that's an interesting one, because with data, you can do so much. And I've seen both extremes where we just collect as much data as we can, but we completely bypass the question, why are we collecting this? For what? What answers do we need to answer? And that's, for me, always been the difference between also me and a data department. For me, data is a tool to answer questions, to take decisions, and it's never the end goal. So that's actually a big difference. And that's what I usually do with most publishers, to ask ourselves the right questions. And data helps answering those questions.
And if you were to sort of, and I'm not asking you to necessarily point a finger in a specific media company's direction, but if you were to sort of say that this is where media companies certainly fail, and this is where media companies certainly succeed, are there areas within the, let's call it, engagement strategies, to just use a blanket term for it? Is there anywhere where they're like, oh, this is super bad and this is super good? Have you seen examples of that without necessarily naming, or feel free to name if you want?
Yes. So one example, if we talk about using data and user data, is where I see it go wrong with other publishers, but also with other consultancy firms, is just having millions and millions of dashboards with a lot of data. And I had to my job was to build a data-informed newsroom. But yeah, we can have tens of metrics, numbers, and everyone is always lost in the woods. So for me, also when we did a lot of audits, also with the media house, the question came, so how much dashboards and how much reports do you have? And I was like, I have one. And then the other part was at 68. And I see this a lot with a lot of companies, also with engagement. We're gathering the data, but not knowing why or what or how we need to do it. So mostly with other publishers, where I'm just drilling down, okay, what is the most important thing that we want to know? What decisions do we need to take? What questions do we need to ask ourselves? And so for that, I often have a very simple framework, and it feels like dumbing it down sometimes. But yeah, that's actually really helpful to taking the right next steps forward, because we can do so much, but we need to do the right things first.
Yeah, getting your ducks in a row and prioritizing is one of the challenging parts, isn't it? Because to your point, there's no shortage of data, it feels like, but there are times when I ask customers as well, or non-customers for that matter, and it seems like um, there's confusion out there sometimes, where there's so much information that they're trying to monitor and act on at the same time, whereas that's just impossible, it seems like.
And something a legacy publishers get better in it, but with the siloed approach we had, and for me that was weird coming from a B2B department and editorial and B2C. We saw it as three different customers. Well, in essence, it's one person seeing advertising, buying a subscription, and reading articles. So for me, that didn't make any sense. But also, if you talk about we want to grow digital, what I still often see is one person KPI full-fledged on inflow, not caring about outflow, and the other person caring about outflow. And they both are, so inflow is going up at a super rate, because that's his KPI. Looking at outflow going up at the same rate. So they're spinning their wheels, but they're spinning the wheels faster. That's something I often tell them. So not looking at the whole, not looking at the actual customer journey or behaving like a customer. That's something usually that gets overlooked.
Yeah, we did a webinar yesterday with Barry Adams, who's an SEO specialist, and I forget who he quoted, but he talked about one of his good friends having a mantra about always ask your customers. And I think that was an interesting aspect, where I feel like a lot of media companies today are not asking their customers actually what they want, and driving that conversation a bit into sort of how to prioritize the high value content, right? And improve efficiency. There's a lot of talk about user needs. There's a lot of talk about content strategies, generally speaking. And I'm certainly no expert in this. But how do you evaluate content performance to prioritize the high value content and improve efficiency? Like, that seems like a big nugget for me to like really solve. And you talked a little bit about it, but can you dive a little bit more into that
So
specifically?
you named an important thing is customers. But for me, and can I give an example here from who are actually our customers? So my first week at the Telegraph, I was looking at the articles, and the best performing article at that week was the nipple slip of Nicki Minaj. Hate to say it, but had a huge amount of pages. But I feel uncomfortable to tell the editor-in-chief, say, hey, we need to make more of this. So I went a little deeper, and I looked into data. Hey, 90% of the people who did these pages, they were not here in the past 30 days. So that's where you get user feedback in terms of data, but looking at the data, okay, but all these pages, all this traffic that we have, those are not our core readers. Who are our core readers? That's the main question I always ask. Okay, so it's our subscribers or people who are likely to subscribe or who we want to attract. And that's actually people with a high engagement. All the other stuff is noise. So when I peeled it down, okay, let's focus on, and then I made 6 years ago engagement levels and said, I don't care what flyby people read or people who come here once per week. I want to know what do people want to read that come here on a daily basis. Those are the Telegraph readers. How can I serve them best? And by just having that split, what do they want to read? But mainly it was, okay, how often do they come to the site? Oh, it's 2-3 times per day. Why are we refreshing the homepage like 12 times? Yeah, it's old news. To you, you're refreshing 50 times per day. For you, it's old news. For our subscribers or our core readers, it is not. Same we did for the amount of publications. How much articles do our core readers read on average? 5, 6, 7, maybe 8. How much do we produce? North of
Yeah.
300. Okay, maybe we're out of balance. So that's always the game I try to play. Okay, how we need to identify our core readers. Who are they? Then okay, how do they behave? And does our publication and production strategy align with the behavior of our audience? How do we better serve them? And once we made the shift towards serving our core readers, that's when engagement hugely went up without actually producing different types of content. Main step is actually we produced a lot less garbage and we took away noise. We often think that the internet or sites are just a limited amount of access. We can put everything on there. That's maybe like how it was 20 years ago, but it's not. We have people have an attention span. We only have this amount of share of voice of articles that we can do. So if you want to increase the average, we can just decrease what is below average. And by having done so, we really improved the quality. And then you see, oh, engagement follows.
And these are things that, you know, should seem quite obvious, right? It should be relatively clear that producing quality content that is actually read by your core readers is important to focus on. One big aspect of things is that I know that newsrooms can sometimes be hard to change because they have their ways of doing things. To your point, you know, refreshing the homepage 12 times an hour or per day, or whatever, you know, too much, right? And producing X, Y, Z of content. Do you have any insight or ideas about how do you actually work with the people in the newsroom to make these changes viable and consumable for them? And, you know, I would assume that there's a stepwise process to that and into how you talk to the newsroom people and product people, I guess, to a certain extent as well, to how to make these changes.
So how I've set up data teams, I always try to say, okay, how can I help the newsroom become the data analysts themselves, that they know what they're doing and why they are doing it. I think a big example is where it can go wrong is we want to have more page views. There's like a metric on it. And then I see articles, and we all know these things like what is dead baby in microwave or sex and murders. I'm like, okay, well, what was the Dutch hook? Was there a person involved? No, it was in South Africa. So what's the angle? So why are we producing this type of content on the homepage? Well, we were behind on page views and we want more page. We know this clicks better. I'm like, okay, fair assumption, but ask yourself these questions. Is this content people are coming back to for more often? No, it's not. I don't know any person who says, oh, I want to read this kind of articles. Let's go to this site. Okay, is this content what people want to buy a subscription for? No, it's not. And actually, in the session, does this content elongate the session or does it shorten it? From anecdotal evidence, we know, hey, the session ends earlier. So in short term, it looks like a net gain in engagement. You get more patients, but in the long run, not. So in the long run, you're killing engagement, promoting news avoidance and all stuff like that. And that's why I'm saying, okay, these metrics, all this data, they can be quite confusing if you're chasing the targets. But asking yourself those questions, should we really? And the journalists themselves, they have this true North Star. And they actually know, okay, we do not really want to make this content, but we need to make targets and goals. Then, okay, stick to your values and make your signature journalism. And having them feel certain to stand up to certain metrics, standards, and really making the good stories, that really helps. But yeah, so data is really a two-edged sword that it can really help, but it can also really damage.
That's good insight. And switching gears maybe slightly, there's enough talk of AI in the world these days. Certainly over the last few days, it's been even more. But there's no way around talking about AI when it comes to a company like yours. Mather acquired Sophie at some point. I forget exactly when, but 2 years ago, something like that.
September 2023.
Yeah, and which changed the game, I would assume, slightly for you as well. But when it comes to leveraging tools like Sophie or similar tools, there's a definite need behind that, where you want to optimize paywalls, you want to automate decisions, you want to drive more revenue. But it's not easy, is it, to just buy a piece of software and then boom, you're done, right? That's not how things work. Sharing your insights on that, how does that really work? Not from a technical perspective, but more practical and perhaps more friendly and user friendly in terms of going live and making things work better for the publisher, because that must be the end goal, I assume.
So Sophie got acquired in the month that I started at Mather. So for me, I was really happy with it because it could really help. And I think that's the big benefit of AI is the scalability and the speed of your work. So for other publishers, they said, well, really, really nice job what you did at Media House. You did it in 6 years. Can you do it for us, but in a couple of months? I'm like, okay, the rules actually are the same. It's the same insights, but we need to build things to actually get those insights. Well, building stuff yourself is quite hard, but with AI, you can then have the models run on their data, answering the same kind of questions so that they can take those decisions. So there, it really helps, but also pivot towards when we did not have these kind of models. If you talk about paywall and a premium strategy, what is premium content? We were first, at least in the Benelux, do we dare to ask money for content? Yes. Okay. Then we decide this is really our premium content. Yes or no? This is what is valuable. But then again, then you're taking the decision for the reader what their value perception should be. And in the beginning, that's all we had. So we had to take this stance, and it was all quite scary because you do not want to lose reach and you want to gain as much subscription revenue as possible. But in the current age, if let the users decide when they are ready to buy and what content actually drives for them their conversion, because that's also a big insight we have seen from the analytics that it's a metric called subscriber views, so page views done by subscribers. They do not only read premium content. Even like 60-70% of what they read is free content, but we say it's unqualitative. Yeah, and that was also a big difference. But so non-premium content is now quality content. No, it's not. And we cannot sit on our high horse and determine what is quality content, what is not quality content, because it differs from person to person. So even for me, when I'm visiting news outlets or sites or whatever apps, I have a total different need in the morning than I have in the afternoon. So sometimes I want this kind of content, sometimes that type of content, but I get to determine what I find valuable and what I want to read, and not the other way around. And dynamic modeling really helps that decision. And where the AI, of course, comes in is how do you balance optimal multiple revenue streams? What is always the best decision? If you have then user feedback real time, that really enhances it. For me, coming from an editorial side, the main benefit is you want to build engagement, either if people are subscribers or non-subscribers, but you do not want to kill them in their journey of the engagement. This is what we've done a lot with paywalling, like a metered strategy. Hey, you're building your engagement after the third visit. Okay, we kill your engagement, say pay or stay or something like that. Well, this person could just not have been ready for it. And that's something which the models can really dictate. And I want to grow their engagement. And if they in the end do not want to pay, but they want to contribute with ad revenue, I'm perfectly fine by that. But I want to have them the ability to grow their engagement as much as we can. And these tools, they really allow for that.
I'm always left with being quite in limbo on one thing, which is, and I know this has been discussed in the industry, but I'm always, as a consumer, very frustrated about the lack of micropayments being available. Why can't I just buy one article? In your experience, what's sort of been the conversation around this? Because to your point, I've read one page, I've read another article, and now you're going to slap me with a paywall. But that article I was actually really wanting to read, but I kind of didn't want to read the rest of this. Or I came from Google, but the article I wanted to read was behind a paywall, so I couldn't really read it. Or someone sent me an article. This happens all the time, where I get sent an article either from a news outlet in the industry, or if it's Financial Times, whatever it may be. And then I just want to read that one article. Have you been in conversations where this has been considered, and what's been sort of the talking points around that?
Yeah. So we had the case of Blendle with micropayments, and eventually that grew into a subscription model. So it was competing with us. So we said, okay, we're backing off again because we are the publisher. But in essence, we still do micropayments, but it's not with the revenue. It's okay, you micropay like with your either registration or with just doing an ad view or filling in a questionnaire or what. So you're paying with other than revenue so that you do not have to go through the subscription system. But you will always have a friction point. But that's also something what we try to unfigure with a lot of publishers as well is we do not want to stop people on a lot of content to get them sign in for that content. And what I mean by that, when in the early days of the paywalls, we had like a few stories and they had hundreds of conversions. We all were very happy with it. We saw a shift over time come. So, okay, instead of one article with 100 conversions, we now have 50 with 2 conversions. We do not have really great content anymore. So no. We're now getting judged by the breadth of our content. People are coming here for the site, not for this article. And then something horrible happened, and we had an article with north of 200 conversions. Well, mark my words, people here are not coming for the Telegraph, they're coming for this article. They will flow in, but after their promotion period, they will flow out. And what do we see actually in terms of customer lifetime value? Hey, these people flow out. So I also try to avoid news from making content where we say, okay, we have a very nice tendency to buy, people want to buy this article, and they flow in. And that's if you look at the whole picture, like, yeah, you have a high inflow, but you also have a high outflow. So the customer lifetime is not that high, especially if you calculate it back to customer lifetime value. So that's something you want to prevent. I'd rather have a lower inflow on the breadth of our content than on these types of articles. But yeah, there comes a point where you have to say, and there will always be frustration. And we need to tickle that frustration to make them come back or say, okay, well, you can read it, but later or in exchange of data or registration or whatsoever. But yeah, we cannot give everything for free, of course, because in essence, we still need to finance the journalism that we do make.
For sure. And that last point that's a whole podcast in and of itself, I think, that last point you made there. But we're going to have to round things off here. And thank you so much. We always have our final question before we really round things off, and that's, Ignaz, how many cups of coffee do you have per day?
I limit myself hard to just 2.
Oh, wow. That's very, very rigid of you. Is there, have you ever, what happens if you go over those 2?
I respond differently to caffeine because I'm neurotypical. So for me, it's like a real boost. So I try to limit that.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. All right. Well, it was really nice talking to you, Ignaz, and thank you so much for the insight that you gave us today. It was really good listening to what you have to say, and I look forward to seeing you at some conference in the future, probably this year.
Thank you for having me.
All right.